right, many thanks for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak, and remember, every Wednesday we like to take a break from politics and focus on the economy. I have some of the best minds in the business here with me in studio to talk a little bit about what's happening, different aspects of the economy, and they will weigh in on those topics. Remember, 22422 is the SMS line. Hashtag is Daybreak. What are your concerns? What are your questions regarding the economy this morning? My guest in studio will help us to dig a bit deeper into that. Joining me is Joy Kiru, an economist and lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Many thanks for making time for us this morning. Together with Ken Gishinga, Chief Economist, Mentoria Economics. Thank you as well.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be joined by others a bit later on in the program. But a little bit about what's been happening in regards to the tax system in Kenya. And now in a notice yesterday, KRA reviewed upwards the excise duty rates for specific products, including petroleum products. We actually ran a story. Can we have that story ready to take into account inflation for the financial year 2020-2021, which is averaged at 4.97%. Now, products affected by the notice will include fruits and vegetables. We can actually run some of those pictures: juices, bottled water, beer and ciders, powdered beer, wines and alcohol spirits. Others are cigarettes, cigars, tobacco products, electronic cigarettes and cartridges used in electronic cigarettes and other manufactured tobacco substitutes. Now, that's not the whole list that I've read, but in the interest of time, I will summarize it that way. But PricewaterhouseCoopers is raising concerns. They say there might be confusion over that KRA notice. And let me tell you exactly what they are saying in regards to this. Let me see if I can just pull this up on my machine here. Their basic concern is in regards to the date that was set, because they say, and let me, oh yeah, good, I have the exact quote here. They say they warn of possible confusion because the legal notice was issued on the 2nd of November, but the consulting firm warned that the notice was published 2nd November, but dated 15th October 2021, and does not clearly define its effective date. And they feel this is likely to cause confusion, as the effective date could be subject to varying interpretations. But nevertheless, let's first find out, what does this mean for you at home, and why should you, care about this? Let me start with you, Ken Gishinga, and get your thoughts on this. KRA reviewing upwards the excise duty rates for the Kenyan watching us from across the country. What does this mean for them?
Thanks for having me, Wahiga. Obviously, this means that the cost of living will go up, because what typically happens is manufacturers will pass the cost increase to the ordinary mwananchi. And this is at a time where people have lost jobs, where the economy is down, where cash in circulation is not what it used to be. And typically what this means is people will find substitutes. Sometimes people find cheaper substitutes. And sometimes those cheaper substitutes can end up having health implications, particularly on things such as drinks, for example, where people go for cheaper drinks. So for me, I think it's another area we need to look at, particularly on consumption tax. I've written before saying consumption tax tends to be very dangerous to an economy, particularly when it's overloaded, and we really need to review our tax policy.
So for you, immediately what you see as a sort of an effect of this, once this sort of goes live, is what, an increase in counterfeit products, or products that are not sort of very above the mark, above board, so to speak, being utilized by more people because they can't afford some of these products that will now be faced with these excise duty?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. Kenyans tend to be very price sensitive. What you call the elasticity of demand tends to be very high. So even a small increase, even in something like cigarettes, for example, even a 5 shillings increase tends to move people to other alternatives. Sometimes those other alternatives tend to often be of lower quality and tend to also have health implications.
Okay. Let me give Joy a chance to weigh in on this as well. And even as you do that, it seems the big idea that the government has had for the last couple of years, and looking at this right now, is to just tax more. Keep taxing, in a sense. And I know this is legislation that was due to come into play. It wasn't a surprise for those who really follow the economy. But is there any other way to keep the country running?
You see, sometimes I wonder if there is a coordination in these policies. 2021 is supposed to be a recovery year as we extend vaccination due to COVID, as we open up businesses and all that. We're expecting Kenyans who are down to be picking up. That's what we expect, and that's what the government has said, and that's the right way to go. Now, when you start taxing, that is discouraging consumption and expenditures and the demand for goods and services, don't you see the contradiction in those two policies? So sometimes the coordination in these policies, sometimes it gets me wondering whether people are talking to each other and setting a common front. But that said, despite the contradiction in this in terms of where the economy is facing and what is happening, we see another worrying trend. We're already worried about the young people. We have a young, disturbed people who are already drinking some bad alcohol, which is causing a lot of problems. We've lost a generation of young people due to alcoholism. And it's not because they're drinking the normal beer, they're drinking the kumi-kumis and these other cheap liquors. They call them kill me quick. 2 shots and you're completely dead and drunk. It's because they have no money. Now, if you keep taxing beer, you see people saying, oh, beer is luxury, beer is luxury. No, beer means the health of a generation. So if you tax the regular health beer so high, then you are digging the graves of these young men many and more deeper into the dust. So we need to rethink that policy of thinking that beer is a luxury if you look at the consequences. And again, water is not a luxury. If you talk about rising taxes on bottled water, I live in a place whereby I've never seen council water forever and ever.
You've never seen council?
I've never seen council water. I am served by private people with boreholes, which are being told that water you cannot drink because the fluorides or whatever they call them, they're so high, even after boiling, they don't just disappear. I am forced to buy water, not because I'm rich, not because I'm looking for luxurious drinking water, but because it's a matter of health for me and my family. So again, people have to think that these things mean health. These things mean lives, real lives, and they should go slow when they want to increase the burden on consuming some of these things.
When you hear that KRA is seeking to collect 6.8 trillion over the next 3 years, and they are looking to do so by tapping into new taxable income sources, what does that make you feel? Is there anything, I guess, quote-unquote, Kenyans can look forward to?
What is this new taxable
income?
That's what I need to know.
Well, I wish we had a representative here too.
That's what I need to know. What is this new? Other than taxing income which has already been taxed. Which is this other new? I really want to, because I always say we are looking to extend the tax bracket. We are looking to increase new taxable income. But the devil is in the details. How are you going to do that? And unless I have that answer, then it's very difficult for me to understand what you see that they're really talking to us other than just hoodwinking us.
Ken, even as you come in, you said obviously it's going to be, this will obviously affect the cost of certain goods and services. Do you see it in any way affecting the cost of doing business? In what ways specifically would you say you see that happening?
No, absolutely. It makes it more difficult to do business when you have a high tax environment. And one of the things that I've always said is we need to have a tax policy. And what Joy is alluding to is we've never had a tax policy that gives a good framework of how taxes should be collected since 1954, when the Ministry of Treasury was founded. So I think any serious candidate running for office needs to say it's time Kenya had a tax policy that says what are the objectives that we are trying to achieve? What are the areas, what are the legitimate areas of revenue collection, and what are the areas that revenue should go to? We've never really had that conversation as a country, and I really hope that comes up next year.
Okay. A bit later on in the program, Joyce Njogu, Head of Consulting and Business Development at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, will be joining us, and she will be telling us exactly how such taxation moves affect the cost of manufacturing. I know that's been a big discussion with great targets in terms of what Kenya could do to increase how much manufacturing contributes to our economy in the coming years. But, you know, manufacturing players have long spoken of the challenges they face, and some would ask, are moves like this? And of course, KRA doesn't do anything on its own. A lot of this goes through Parliament first. They pass various laws that then KRA implements. And, you know, there have been concerns that Kenya might not quite achieve its manufacturing targets if we continue implementing some of these taxes that at the end of the day really hit the pockets of ordinary Kenyans and business people who are, in a sense, trying to earn a living. And tied with that, Joy, is another interesting announcement by KRA. I believe it was yesterday, if not the day before, one that's gone viral, which is KRA's plans to start trolling Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and other social media platforms to catch tax dodgers and cheats. One gets the sense that we have a revenue authority that is keen. And you asked, where will these new income sources come from? Well, it seems there's one idea here. A viable option in your view, or a futile gesture?
Whoever is leading that initiative is a stranger in Jerusalem. He doesn't know the rules of the game of social media. The rule is fake it till you make it. I mean, borrow a nice car and do some nice videos at the background. It's about creating impression. It's like giving a picture larger than life. That's how Kenyans live on social media. So if you want to think that there's something serious in that, then welcome, be my guest, and tell me what you find there. Okay, and many people have dismissed this at that, but apparently overseas, in certain countries, for example, we're told in Australia, the deployment of certain tools to help their revenue authority catch, especially people who run companies maybe, and declare, every year a loss of some sort or something of the sort. They were actually able to find that whereas someone has constantly declared losses or zero profit, on the other hand, the lifestyle that they post online is markedly different, and maybe even how they post their business online. And thus they're able to go and ask further questions. Beyond the jokes and social media, could there be a point to this? Let me ask you something. We know what social media is about. It is just like, it is social. You want to project yourself in the best image socially. Just like if you asked me today, Maura, how are you, Joy? I'm going to say I'm fine, I'm well, I can't be better. Good as gold. But I won't tell you, I didn't eat last night. My kids are at home, they have not gone to school. That is how social media is supposed to work. It's about setting your best foot to society. Camouflaging, just getting out and just having a time to just be who you are not exactly, but then there's a lot of peace in that. That's just what social media is. So that is why a lot of companies look very nice on their websites. I once booked, I was traveling to the DRC, and I went online to look for an hotel. And I was impressed by this nice little hotel because of their social media, because of their online presence, their website. But believe me, I was extremely disappointed when I get there. I will never forget that.
So for you feel it may not yield the kind of returns that can.
You need to understand how social media works and how people post what they post.
Okay.
And what is the real motive of that? The real motive is to project yourself differently to the society, which is okay. That's how human beings function. If you ask me how I am, you really, hali yangu utaweza? Kweli, jameni. Mbona nauliza? It's social media, it's social life.
Ken, I don't think you spent the many years in school that you did to ever figure out that one day you'd sit in a studio and discuss KRA and social media. But unfortunately, that's where we are right now. So I also need to get your view on this because some feel that a wider tax base within the long term cushion the formal sector workers from an increase in tax rates, so allow KRA to do whatever they must do to widen the tax base.
Well, this is an interesting area that I've actually written on. Social media can actually be a game changer, but on the area of monetary policy, not fiscal policy. And what do I mean? If you look at inflation, for example, how do we calculate inflation? Typically, we look at baskets of goods. What did Wahiga consume this year versus last year? But people tend to change how they consume. So the use of social media and e-commerce, looking at how you do your e-commerce, it can be able to give us a better estimate of inflation and such. And that's what the Bank of England, that's the direction they're moving. But that's under monetary policy. When you come to fiscal policy on revenue, I agree with Joy, it's much harder. First of all, the principles of taxation. One of the principles of taxation is the cost of administration must be easy to administer it. So having a whole room of people really walking through your Instagram pages, and as Joy has said, on on social media, we are all healthier and richer and wiser and more beautiful. It's a mirage of the reality. So I would move away from what they're trying to do, because the cost of administration would be insane, and you wouldn't be able to actually collect much, because there's a lot of fake stuff there. But I think when it comes to monetary policy, ability to measure inflation, because, you know, when you talk about this inflation-adjusted excise tax, you know, there is evidence that the numbers we have are overstated, because people tend to look for cheaper substitutes. So if you can be able to scrape through the online, the e-commerce, the Jumias of such, you'd be able to get a much more precise estimate of inflation, and your monetary policy would make sense. So I think there's that idea.
There's something to it.
There's something to it, right?
But not
on the fiscal policy side, on the monetary policy side.
Joy, there's always been a discussion around whether you can tax a country into prosperity. There's a limit to that. There's a limit to that. You see, in economics, we say that taxation, increases in taxes are contractionary, from the word contract. They contract, they have contracting effects or recession effects to the economy, just for the layman who is there, who is listening to understand what I'm talking about. That is a fact about increases in taxation. And because of that, you only increases in taxation only work best if you think there's too much money in circulation, if you think that there's too much income because of low unemployment. But that's not the case in Kenya. We are just trying to maneuver through a pandemic. Unemployment has become a campaign platform because it's really a huge problem. Now, how then do you justify increases in taxation at this time? Yes, there is room for taxation in improving the economic performance, macro stability, but there are limitations to that, and the indicators right now are that KRA should go easy in taxation. The indications right now, the best advice are that go easy in taxation, let the economy grow, let people rebound, then you can tax. Okay, Ken, I mean, what Joy is saying is music to every Kenyan's ears. But the reality is there's a government that must continue running. There are debt obligations that whoever takes over next year will have to deal with as well. Right. Is it possible for KRA to actually ease back on taxation? Is that realistic? Well, put yourself in their shoes. Well, you're right. They do have targets. Public debt is quite high, that they need to service that public debt, and the cost of running government is significant. I don't think it can be done in 1 year. I think it needs to be over like a 5-year strategy where we say, how do we increase our revenue and how do we reduce our cost? I think also the discussion we've never had is what's the right size of government, because that is what impacts the type of taxation. And if you go to the US, there's that philosophical outlook where the Republicans tend to be more for smaller government, so definitely more lower taxations. You'd find that Democrats tend to be more for a bigger government with more on the welfare side, so more taxation. I don't think we've reached that philosophical position in our country where we've decided what's the right size of government, because that's ultimately what dictates how much taxation we should raise. Okay, very interesting perspectives from both of you, but you know what? We need to take that break, come back. As I mentioned, we'll also be getting a sense of how all this affects manufacturing. With great targets for manufacturing, but still a long way to get there, what needs to be done to ensure that manufacturing is strengthened, and are any of the promises being made by presidential aspirants really working towards that, or not? Joyce Njogu, Head of Consulting and Business Development at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, will be joining us a bit later on in the program. We have lots to talk about. 22422 is the SMS line. #Daybreak. Stay with us. We'll be right back.